The assignment name for this one is Phillips. Okay, so if you're looking at like the first day handout, it says Phillips. Like I said, it's going to cover a lot of different things. It builds on all the same processes, all the same tools that we've already done, and it's adding more to them and kind of reinforcing them and then showing a different way to apply them. All right. So you can watch these, take notes. You shouldn't need to follow along with them because, like I said, they're very similar to everything we've already done, just a different way to do them. Come on. Your other ones aren't going to be due yet. That's why it's taking so long. When these are turned in, we'll be turning in the other ones too. Okay, so it'll be like a pack, and I'm going to show you how we're going to be setting those up. Come on, there you go. All right. So the setup process for this is exactly the same as the other one. We make a new comp, make it about 3 seconds. It's always a good frame of a work frame here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create something. I call this a blip. Okay, it's basically just like a little effect or a little additional thing that you can add to your stuff to make it happen a little bit more excitingly. Very good. So in this, remember the one we did last time where I showed you how we could take a single transition, make it into its own composition, and then use that composition over and over and over again and offset it? That's what we're going to be doing with this. So I'm going to make either a shape or a solid or a whatever, and I'm going to animate it. So in this case, I'm going to use a shape. So I'm going to go to my shapes here. Now I actually don't want to use any of these shapes. I want to draw out my own shape. Okay. So I'm going to click off. I'm going to go to the pen tool, and just like the pen tool in Photoshop or Illustrator, I could draw the exact shape that I want. Okay? And the nice thing about this is that you could just draw a whatever shape like that. And I'm going to pull this down to, let's say, there. Adjust my handlebar. Let's do something a little bit fancier. Let's take that one. I'm going to hold Alt. Oops. No. Click off, click back on it. There we go. And pull that out. All right, so now I have this kind of like wavy line here. So that might be kind of cool. Again, if I need to adjust it, you know that I can go back and adjust all this stuff. I'm going to take the fill off, just like we've done before. I'm going to crank the stroke up. All right. Now, if I don't like the way that the stroke is looking, there's a bunch of stuff that I could do to add to this to adjust it even after the fact. Okay. Also, we have under, oops, not there. Mask. Effects. Effects. Yeah, there. They were up. They were just thinking still. We have more effects and stuff we can add to this. Remember, changing color. So I'm not going to be concerned about the color of this at this point. I'll be concerned about the color of it kind of like afterwards. Now I'm just kind of setting it up. So the fact that I'm using white is cool because I can always come back and adjust the color to be red or blue or green or any color I need to. Okay. Every time you use the effects, it seems like it's frozen. It's not frozen. Even if I click, it's going to seem like this is frozen. It's not. It's just loading those effects and presets. Once it's done loading the effects, then it'll kind of refresh itself. But every time you click on the effects, it does this basically loading through all the little plugins and presets that are there. We'll be dipping more into this as we go. For now, because you're not accustomed to using these things, you don't know what they're called, your best bet for any of this is to use the effects here and find it inside this list. I'm going to use this because it's just quicker for me to type stuff if I need to get to it. Okay, so here you can go and find effects if you need to, or if you know you need like hue, you can just type in hue. Okay, but we're not there yet. All right, so I'm going to leave this like that, maybe a little bit lighter. There we go. Okay. Remember too that we can also go under the contents for the shape. And under here we have a whole bunch of other stuff that we can adjust as well. So even if we wanted this line, instead of it being straight, we could add dashes to it. We can change the kind of cap that's on it. So let me crank it up. Instead of it being a butt cap, I could do a round cap. And now we have these rounded edges on here, as opposed to those cut off ones. You can also do projecting cap. I've never done projecting cap. I usually do round or butt. And then you could add dashes to create some neat, interesting looks. All right, so lots of different things you can do. It's just a matter of going through these menus and kind of playing with them just to see. After Effects is pretty sweet with how quickly you can just click on something, adjust some settings, and see exactly what's happening with it. All right, so I need to create my first little part of this little like whoop thing, blip thing. So I'm going to go to my add, and I'm going to do a trim path. Now we did trim path before. That was the one where we did the round ones, and I used the trim path to show how each one of those works. So I'm going to open up my trim path, and in this case, you can see what it's going to do, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have this kind of come out. All right, so I'm going to have this start at the center and go outward. All right, so it's going to start here. I'm going to scoot it up a little bit. Go here. Now what I want to do is for this to go away. Okay, I don't want it to just go there and stop. I actually want it to go out and then disappear. Okay, kind of like it's going through a tube or something. Okay, so then I'm going to also animate this end. So if I go to where this one's ended, set a keyframe for the end, go up a little bit, and put this to 0, you'll see that I get this animation. It comes out, and then it goes in. Okay? So if I hit play, it looks like that. All right. So then once I have that, I can just kind of tweak this. Oops. I'm just going to pull these back a little bit more. Sometimes you may want to overlap them too, just so that they don't like start, stop, and then start and stop the next one. Okay, so sometimes you get like a little pause. So that seems a bit quicker. That's nice. All right, so my next step in this is I'm going to right click, keyframe, easy ease. That process does not change from the first assignment to the last assignment. Everything we're going to do is going to have some sort of ease on it. Going back to the 12 principles of animation, they specifically identified easy ease as one of those principles. So we want to make sure we have that. Then I go into my graph, I edit my graph. I'm going to change back to my arrow tool, grab all my keyframes, and then I can just drag them over to the right. And then I'll see how it looks. That looks pretty cool. Now, if I preview this, you'll see it previews, and then I have basically like all of this black space where nothing happens inside of my screen. Okay? Remember that we can change our work area. So if I want to see what this little blip is going to look like without having to wait for all this black space, I can hit N, and that changes where my work area is. So I just move my ticker, hit N, move my ticker, hit N. Or I can just grab it and drag it to where I want the N to be. So now when I hit play, you'll see that it only plays just that one area. All right, so that looks pretty neat. So now that I have this, I basically have like a little clip. I have a little piece of an animation that I want to reuse a whole bunch of times. So I'm going to go to my composition here and say trim comp to work area. Because I hit N, I adjusted my work area to only the required component. I could trim it. Okay. Now it's important that you do this step every time you're working with something, because if you leave let's say I have 25 seconds long of a composition and I only need 1 second, After Effects still goes to that composition and calculates nothing's happening. Okay. So if it's already cut down to exactly what I need, it skips over that, so now it's going to run faster. All right, which is very important because when you get to some of these later comps, it's going to take maybe 5, 10, 20 minutes to render your stuff out. That could be reduced significantly if you optimize. All right, so I'm going to rename this one to curvy line. Cool. So I'm going to take my curvy line, I'm going to put it into a new comp just by dragging the curvy line comp onto my composition. So now I have curvy line 2. I'm going to rename to, it's kind of like a spiral blip. Okay, so here's my curvy line, and you'll see that it automatically fits it to perfectly that size. So whatever source you're giving it, it automatically fits that composition to be the exact size of that source file, the exact size of this. So if I take this now and I duplicate it, let's say 10 times, and then I rotate each one of these. So let's say I rotate it, just so you can see what's happening. I'll leave this here. Let's see, I rotate it 36 degrees. Then I go to the next one, and that one is 72 degrees. And I go to the next one, and that one is 36 plus 72, 108. There we go. That's right, right? 6, 2, 8, 2, yes, okay. And then I rotate this one plus that. I'll do this a little bit easier. Here's a cheat. If I just grab these and I duplicate those, shove them down to the bottom, go to my rotate, I can watch this rotate, and I take that one to 36, and it automatically takes the other ones up their increment. Hey, it didn't do it. I took that one, didn't take the other ones. Oh, right. Whatever. I don't know why I thought that would work. 108 plus 36 is 144. Yes. Okay. Give me 1 second while I think of this, because that should have worked. Rotate. Oh, that's what it is. I'm going to rotate this bottom one here to 144. That's what it is. I rotate the bottom one to 144, which automatically rotates the other ones in increment, and then I just have this extra one that I can delete. That's what it was. All right, and then the last one, I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'll rotate this one to be negative 36. Okay, so what we're doing is, where I got 36, I had 10 copies. I have 360 degrees, so 360 divided by 10 gives me 36. Okay. Now keep in mind too that positive 36 is 36. Negative 36 is just the other way. So if I go negative, I can go that same way. So I could have duplicated half of this and just set each one of those to a negative value, and it would have offset them the correct direction. Okay. So now if we look, we have this neat little pattern. Okay. Then we can take this and offset it. So I'm just going to offset 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so now they're offset each by 1 second. So without playing it, what issue am I going to run into? Sir?
Each line is going to come up at a different time.
Right, and so what's that going to mean for when I hit play? If I were to hit play, I'm at the end. Right, they're not going all the way off because I need more time, right? So I'm going to go up to my comp and go to my settings and then just add some more time in here. So we were at 17 frames, so I'm going to put this at 2 seconds. And then I'll zoom out. And now, let me reset my work area right here. Okay. Now looking at this, it's like, it's okay, you know? But I want to adjust it. I want it to look a little bit fancier. These lines are way too thick. They should not be thick. And I'm not really sure I like the curviness of this. I may want to adjust that also. So if I jump back to my curvy line and I just take the stroke down to, let's say, 20. I jump back to my spiral blip. Now they're thin. Okay? If I jump back to my curvy line and let's say I take my keyframes here and I just kind of spread them out a little bit more, jump back to that, they'll be on screen a little bit longer. Okay? Or maybe I don't like the tangents of them or the speed of them. So let me go and adjust their speed. By adjusting the speed of 1, it adjusts all of them. Okay? Because basically all of these are just that same animation played over and over and over again.
So when you do the command, you use automatically in effects.
Yep. There you go. So that looks pretty neat. Okay, now I don't like the curvy line, so let me fix that. I go back to this, so I don't have to see that anymore. I click on my path. Come on. And then I can just straighten these handlebars out. Okay. Now, the reason that this one worked so well, not that it works perfect, but it works so well, is because I did some kind of setup right at the beginning. When I drew this line, I basically started it at the center of this and drew it out this way. If I didn't do that, and I just kind of drew it, just so we can see, I'll just hide this and draw another one. If I just went like this, and left that there, when I come back to this, that's what's going to happen. It's just the shapes are going to be over there. So my animation would go on that side. Okay? So as we do these kinds of things, we have to make sure we're kind of setting it up correctly. So for this kind of thing, we actually don't need a huge composition because this isn't our final animation. Our final animation would be something over here. Okay? And if we look at the shape of this, let me go back to where it's, oops. This is off, this is on. The shape of this, if we just kind of drew a box around it, it's exactly square, right? Or it should be pretty square. So there's no sense in these kinds of things of even using a rectangle because this isn't the final animation. This is something that would be added to something else as a final animation, okay? So let me delete these and I'm going to make a new comp, okay? Now here's where it's going to get different. So I'm going to call this blip straight line. Okay. Now instead of doing this at 1080, which is what our final video would be, we want to do this in a square format. Now there's no square formats inside here. Okay. So what I have to do is turn this off, and then I'm going to set this up to be like let's say 512 by 512. Okay. That's still fine. This is still fine. I could set it to 3, but I know I'm not going to need that much. And I'm going to hit OK. All right. So now I get this square. So now when I go into my rulers, and I can turn on some of my other guides here, like my title safe. There we go. See how I get a little dot right in the middle? So now I can use that dot as my center. So when I start to draw stuff and I want to make sure it's coming right from the center, I can line it up perfectly. So I just drag a guide to the center. There he is. Drag a guide to the center. There he is. And now I can go with my pen tool, and I gotta lock my guides, otherwise it wants to select them. There we go. And I want to go out to the side. Now if I go this way, okay, if I went all the way to this corner and I started to rotate it, it's going to cut off. Okay. Now if you need to see that, but I'll show it anyway. If I take that shape and I start rotating it, see how it gets cut off right there. I don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is instead I'm going to draw this shape off to this side. Okay. So now as this rotates, that's not going to get cut off. And this is also a good way to kind of preview it to see if it's going to do anything wonky. If I drew the shape kind of like way over here, that shape would just obviously not follow the center. I want it to follow the center. I want it to look like it's coming out of the center because it looks better. All right, that's cool. All right, so it comes out of the center. Let me just reset this back to 0. That's cool. Let me go back to my shapes. I'm going to add a trim to this. I'm going to do the same animation that I did before. Oops. When I said the same, I have to actually start it so it is the same. There we go. This way first. Okay. These numbers really depend on which way you drew it. I started at the center and then went out, so I have to start with the end this time. Go. Start keyframe. Go up a bit. Animate that. Okay. Awesome. All right, so now I have that. So I will take my keyframes. I will set them to easy ease. I will go into my graph editor. I will grab my graph editor stuff. I'll squeeze those over to one side. I'm done with my guides now, so I can just hide my guides. All right, that looks cool. And there's my shape. All right, so now I'm going to take this shape and drop it into a new comp, just like I did before. This is square, that's fine, because like I said, we're going to take this comp eventually and we would drop it onto something, and that's where we would get the additional thing. This is not its own animation. You wouldn't have like we saw page transitions where people saw a page transitions pack. There's no like blip packs, okay? It's just like you add these things to your other stuff. All right, so here's our animation of this. I can turn the action safe off too. Oops, that off, keep that on, there we go. All right, so now I'm gonna duplicate this 10 times, yes, okay. And we'll go back in and we'll rotate this to 36, rotate this to 72, rotate this to 108, rotate this to 144, and then watch how I can do backwards. So negative 144, negative 108, negative 72, negative 36, and I probably have to have one right in the center here. Let's just verify. I'll just go out. Yep, see I missed one right there. That one should be 180. All right, cool. All right, now watch what happens too when I add motion blur to this. Because the animation is happening so quick, that motion blur effect should be pretty sweet. So we go here, we go there, we've added motion blur to this. And we see pretty much no difference. Why don't we see a difference? Exactly. We need to edit it on the first one. This has no animation. Even though we're seeing an animation, this comp is not physically moving. It's like if I took a video of my dog running and then I tried to add motion blur to it, it doesn't know that my dog is running. It's playing a video. That's what these are doing, just playing a video. So I'm going to turn these off. Turn this off. Then I'll go back to my comp, turn this on, turn this on. Okay, and now we get this nice little streak. Look at that. That little thing. And that makes it appear that it's going a bit faster than it actually is. So now we come back to this, and now we have that little streak right there. Okay, and again, we add sound effects. The sound effects make it feel like it's working. The sound effect goes too slow, it doesn't work. Now you will notice, maybe I'm just zoomed out too far. Maybe I have something selected, no? You will notice that there is a tiny hair right there, okay? I'm gonna jump back to my comp, and we can definitely see, whoops, there's a tiny bit of a thing right there. And this is just something that happens as we animate this stroke in here. You can see it doesn't all go away, and that's because of the motion blur, okay? So what I can do is I can create a mask on top of this just to kind of cut out that area, and that would work. I could also just go to this layer right here where it's supposed to be off, and I could just do a Alt right bracket, okay? So Alt right bracket takes that layer and it cuts it and says you're not displayed anymore. All right, so basically it's going to come out, goes in, and now it's gone. Okay, so that's the easiest way to take care of that. Alt right bracket goes to wherever your ticker is, and then it cuts the animation right there. Okay, So now we won't have that little line. Okay. Now I could go through, grab each one of these, and offset them manually. Is there an easier way I could do that? I showed it last week. It was too far along.
Select them all, do something.
Yep. Select them all. Under Animation, Keyframe Assistant, and we can sequence the layer. Okay? And what this does is it takes your selection order and it'll stair step them. Okay? So this animation, or this comp that we're looking at down here, is 2 seconds long. So I basically want each one of these to overlap by 1 second and some frames. So 1 second and let's say 28 frames. I don't want to do a transition, I hit OK. So now if we look at this, okay, so now we get these like, hey, that's kind of neat, right? Fireworks. Now what's really neat about this is, let's say we didn't want this, okay? Let's say we're doing something where a ball hits the ground. It may not make sense to have that happen, okay? It may not even make sense to have them do what they just did. So I'm going to do this. Let me rename this guy here to Blip Go Around. Whatever I want to call it, okay? This is good for maybe a punch, like bam, someone gets punched. But it may not be good for a ball hitting a wall. Yes, ma'am.
How come the thing on the other comp is affecting what's on there?
On here? Because of this. Because imagine I drew something in Illustrator and then I drug it into After Effects.
Right.
If I go back to Illustrator and edit it, it'll affect what's in After Effects. Okay? Same kind of concept. Except in here, we have the straight line on one comp and we have the copies of them on another comp.
Okay, so did you just duplicate that?
I just took this and you just drag the straight line and just drag it right to the new comp, and it puts it in a new comp all by itself.
Okay.
And then I duplicated each one of those to get that. Okay? So now what I can do is I'm going to duplicate the go around. Okay? And I'm going to rename this to Blip Half. If I double click that, I have a different, this is a duplicate of the other one. A duplicate does not affect the other ones. Okay, so I duplicate a comp, it's on its own. If I duplicate a layer, it's on its own. I can do different things with it. So in here, we're getting the same animation. But what I can do is turn off, oops, keep that one on. Turn off, actually let's just keep this one on, turn that one off. There we go. Okay, so now I have one blip that is a full circle. And then I have another blip that's just that. And then maybe on this one I do want to offset these. So I'm going to just a little bit of offset on them. Just a little bit there. Oops, a little bit closer. When you have too much delay in them, it just doesn't always look right. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. Okay, so now very quickly we're able to create a different animation. So the purpose of this assignment is to get you comfortable with what's called nesting compositions. Okay, we make an animation in this composition, we bring that comp into another comp, and then we're able to duplicate it, offset them, rotate them, do whatever to create different kinds of things. Now the application for these is that you're going to create 3. So the first one was 5-page transitions, right? This one you're creating 3 animations that are going to be accompanied or assisted by blips, right? Okay. So here is where we would apply like a blip to it. So I'm going to go to a brand new composition. This is going to be 1080. Oops, not that one. There we go. 1920 by 1080. The animation might be, let's say, 6 seconds, because this is actually an animation. And I'm going to drop in a ground. I don't want a stroke on the ground. I do want a color or a gradient. And where are my colors? There's white. Actually, let's go with green there. That's cool. Okay, and then I will go to my, oops. That's it. Location, that. I'm going to go down here to my gradient fill, and then I'm going to change my endpoint. Where's it at? Usually it shows the endpoint up here. Oh, there we go. I had to be in the arrow tool, which I usually forget. I'm just going to move these gradient points to control the gradient. So I'm basically starting off with a bit of green on top, and then a bit of white underneath, just to give it some coloration. Cool. And then I'll drop in another image, or another shape for my background. That one will not be that color. That one will be blue. That's good. I'll go back to this. I'll go back to that. Cool. This will be underneath that layer. So now it kind of looks like we have a sky and a little ground. Okay. All right. So now for the actual blip. I'm going to make a circle, so I just double click it because I want an actual circle. Oh, I don't want that color. I want that color. I don't want that color. I want like that. That's cool. All right, then we go to ellipse. We go to the path. We unlink it. Let's say 300. That's cool. And then I'm going to animate this. Okay. So the ball is just going to come in, hit the ground, and then bounce out. So I'm going to hit position. And this is review at this point, right? We've made shape layers. We've played with some colors. We're animating some basic features of it. That's all review. So it starts here. We go up to, let's say, 2 seconds. He comes in. He hits the ground. 4 seconds. He's out. Okay. I'm going to go in with my pen tool, and the pen tool allows me to edit these paths. So I hold Alt, drag on the path, hold Alt, click this path, hold the path. The point is already there. You have to grab it, and I can pull that out. Okay. So now it should go boing, come out. Boing, it comes out. Now, even though I haven't hit F9 or gone to easy ease, even though I haven't gone into the graph editor, me tweaking these handlebars affects the animation of this thing. Okay? So as I pull these further and closer, you can see how the points are getting distributed a little bit differently. So I have to be aware of that. I'm still going to hit, right click on this, and still go to easy ease, still go to the graph editor and still tweak this. But just so you know, it does affect it a bit by doing it out there. So I'm going to...
Is it better to use the pen tool before you do all that?
Yes. Because what could happen is if you didn't, when you're out here, it could affect... If you did this and then use a pen tool, it would basically counteract each other. So now I'm going to go in here. Oops. I want this to go this way. Okay. So the fastest part of this animation should happen right before it hits the ground. And what that's going to do is it's going to really emphasize that hit to the ground. So it's going to go kind of slow and then go boom, and then come off, which makes us see we should probably have an impact point there, you know, a blip. Aha, that wasn't very good. The keyframes are too far apart. Let's just squeeze these in closer. Let's go to 1 second and 2 seconds. Don't be afraid to tweak stuff. All right, we're getting there. Let's go back. Click this. Maybe I'll pull this down a little bit. I think I need to even it out just a little bit more, because I'm getting too much slowness at the beginning, and that just looks weird. All right, that looks better. Cool. All right, so it's good enough for what we're doing. So now when this ball hits the ground, I want a little blip. I want something in there to make it look like or feel like it's actually making contact with the ground. So I have my blip go around, I have my blip half, and then I have this blip straight line. So only 2 of these I can use. Which 2 can I use for a blip? The half one is one. What's the other one? Go around, right? Those are the only 2 that are actually like a blip. This one is just the line to help me set up the blip. So if I drop the blip go around on here, and I'll just scoot it out of the way for now. I'm going to go to where the ball makes contact right there. Then I'm going to bring this animation in and just slide it until it's about where I want it, and then move it to about where it should be happening. Okay, so now, oops, that happened too soon. Let's scoot this up a bit. There we go. Okay, so in a very simple way, we've shown how we can use bloop, that little blip. All right, now let's pretend we didn't like it. I've gone through this process. It took me 6 hours to set up this blip go around in the exact right spot, the exact right timing. I don't want to ruin where that's all at. All I have to do is make sure this is clicked, and then I can just click on this one, hold Alt, and then drag it on top of it. And what that does is it just replaces it with it. Okay, so whatever you've done to it, it just drops it right in the same spot. So the position and then the timing of it is all linked up. There we go. Maybe this one can come back a little bit more. Still think this probably needs to be a bit quicker. Scoot that out of the way. There we go. That feels better. That feels more blip worthy. There. All right. And then maybe a little bit lower too. Looks like it's a little bit high. There we go. So that feels a little bit better of where it's at now. Okay. So now what else we can do to this is change the color. So if I just go to this, you would come up here because you don't know the names of all your stuff yet, and you would go to color correction and you would pick from this list something to adjust the color. Again, don't be afraid to play with these. If you don't like the way they look, undo it, delete it, whatever, and try something else. So with this, I could use a hue and saturation, hit colorize, and then I just have to darken it some so it'll actually absorb some of the color. Maybe I'll overly saturate it, shift this to a blue, that's cool. There we go. All right, now I can also take this whole comp and duplicate it and rotate it and basically get like 2 of these out of it. Or duplicate it again, rotate it the other way, and get like 3 of them out of it. Okay, depending on how my animation needs to happen, I could do this all day long and just really tweak what each one of these is looking like. It probably feels like it more if I don't have this last keyframe. Yeah. More exciting the other way. Boop. There we go. Okay. So that's the process. So you're going to create a very simple animation, like the straight line. There we go. And then you'll take that and you'll put it into a composition, rotate it around, duplicate it, and you'll be able to create this kind of thing. Okay, and then you can duplicate that comp again, and then do it for like a half of it. Now, just so you can see the process for this too, is sometimes just to kind of make things easier for myself. I think that's all of them. Duplicate that. All right. Let's say that I didn't like having, the divisions here. I wanted, let's say, more. So I duplicate this. I go 10 degrees. I duplicate it. I go 20 degrees. Duplicate it. This is going to take me a while to go all the way around if I tried to do something like this, especially if my math is not good with tens. 50, and then duplicate it again, and then that would be 60. Cool. All right, so here's my blip go around. I can pre-comp the blip go around if you want to get really advanced. This is half of one, or whatever, a quarter of one. I can duplicate it and then rotate this 70 degrees. Duplicate that again, 140. Duplicate that again. 210. Duplicate that again. 280. There we go. And then I missed one for real. I'll drop in straight line. Just drop in one straight line here. -10. There we go. Okay. So very quickly or quicker, I can comp and pre-comp and pre-comp and pre-comp just to make my job a little bit easier. Okay. I don't need to do that. I'm going to stick with the go around that I had already. There we go. Okay. And then of course I'm going to name this bouncing ball. Okay. So for my folders, I'm going to make a folder called Blips. There we go. And then I'll make another folder called Animations. Okay. Because in this one, we're focusing more on blips and animations, right? In the other one, we had solids, basically, or shapes, and then we had compositions, and we organized them like that. Okay, so you're going to make 3 of these kinds of things. 3 blips, 3 different blips, not the same blip, 3 different blips, and then you're going to animate something to it. So for today, you may only get through one of these probably, making one blip, and then making one animation that accompanies that blip. All right, as we get further on, next class, I'll show different ways we can incorporate blips into our animations. But again, just looking at some of these other ones that are out there, and they're all in like motion graphics types reels, you'll see how they just accompany things just to make them feel a little bit nicer. That's subtle, but it's like there's one. That's not really a blip there. The little fish things, do you see the little fish things right when he goes in? Bloop, those little blips. There's a lot of 3D stuff in here. Those are little blips there too. Watch next to the wording. Those things there, those are little blips. All these little circle things here, those are little blips. Okay. And just so you can see one more little blip example, I'll make another little blip real quick. 512 by 512. 3 seconds. There we go. And so far everything is review with this. We've seen this thing before. There's nothing new. Cool. Scale 0. So I'm just going to animate the scale of this. So I'm going from 0 to 100. Like that. It goes really slow, so I have to ease this, shrink it down. Pull the animation this way. I like it that way. And then I will duplicate the animation just inside here. Okay. So I have basically 2 of these doing the exact same thing. I'm going to offset one of them, and just for the example, I'm going to show how if I make this black, how it appears that that circle is now disappearing. Okay. But now watch what happens if I take this. Where's my bouncing ball? There he is. Just drop this in here. You can see it's not actually going to black. There's purple. I mean, it's not disappearing. It's still black. Okay? So when we have something black in here, even though it looks like it's transparent, it's not transparent there. Okay? So just to show you one little extra thing, under the switches and modes, we can turn on what's called track matting. Okay? Basically, it's going to use another layer as a transparency. So with this one, I'm going to say use the alpha, which is basically the transparency, from the layer above it. Okay? So right now it comes out, and there it is. Now what's happening is wherever this one is visible, that one is visible. What I want to do is opposite. I want to say wherever that other one is visible, do the opposite, make it invisible. So if I go in here and make it inverted, that's what will do the opposite. So now it's gone. So now we go bloop. Okay, looks like the same animation, but if I go to the bouncing ball, you'll see how it's not. It actually is transparent. Okay, And now the only thing I have to do different, if you look, there's a tiny bit of a hair right there. Okay, it's just how the stuff works. On this layer, I'm just going to add a tiny stroke of like 2 pixels. And that should take care of that line. Okay, basically, because they're like right on top of each other, they fight over who gets shown, so they have that little tiny hair going around it. By making this one have a stroke, it's a little bit bigger, so we don't see it. All right.
Oh, so the second one's smaller?
The first one was smaller. The one that's in the transparency is bigger. Okay. So now, oops, we can see it here zoomed out. When we zoom in, we can't see it. That's the important thing. Okay. Always zoom in because you want to make sure you have the right thing there. Okay. Woo, cool. Now this whole setup here, I could duplicate that and then offset it, and duplicate that and offset it. Okay, so now we'll get this. You know, offset these a bit more. Okay, and then we add it to the bouncing ball. Ooh, cool. Okay, or we could scatter them so that they're like more like bubbles, so they're all not right on top of each other. We could have several different iterations all the way around. If I scaled these, oh, I can't scale them because they're already scaled. I'd have to pre-comp and whatever. All right. But you get the idea of how we can then animate different shapes too. So it's not always just these straight lines. You can do circles. A lot of it is just kind of like, hey, this is cool. Like, look at that color that they choose here, right there. See how they have like the blue and the orange, and they're using that as little colored areas too. Okay, so you'll see blips all over the place, and they're just like really cool to add to your stuff. This is another, I know this one is loaded with them, that one's loaded with them, even in their thing. Usually your title sequences have them. That's like usually a really popular thing to have it in your title. Skip the ad. There you go, lots of little blips happening right here, and they're all gone. There's actually inside of this, there's like blips and page transition things going on, right inside of just what we just saw. Okay. All right. So play with the blips, add them to your animations,